Hello and welcome to the Pete Beat. This is the unofficial podcast of the Pete for America campaign. So I am not affiliated with the campaign. This is unofficial by every potential measure. I'm Ben Chapman. I'm a reporter and a writer and a college student. So I'm putting this together in my bedroom and hoping that some of my friends will join me for the ride. We've got some ambitious plans, but at the end of the day, we're busy people. So, we're never going to be really sure where this adventure will take us next. But I guess I should introduce what I'm hoping to accomplish here. The Pete Buttigieg campaign is a fascinating story. It's a kind of small town mayor, comparatively, who wants to run for president and is doing a pretty great job of it. Is winning remarkable national press coverage, is, according to a poll today, massively outpolling some previously expected frontrunners. And there seems to be this sort of magic around Mayor Buttigieg, and it's unclear exactly what it is to me. I'll be honest, I'm not fully on board the Buttigieg bandwagon yet. That's not because I have questions about him, but it's because it's March and I don't have to vote in this primary for another year. But I'm fascinated by the story, and I'm fascinated by what is happening with this campaign. So I want to be part of the conversation. So that's why I'm starting this podcast, and it's why I'm trying to get some other folks to eventually add their own voices in and see what kind of commentary and what kind of thoughts come together about the Buttigieg for President campaign. So today, I guess, as an introductory podcast, I'll just do a news roundup. I'm sure I'll have lots of opinions to give you about Pete's messaging and about what his competitors are doing right and wrong. But for today, there's plenty of news to talk about. So the first big piece was a poll done, an Emerson poll done in Iowa, that put Pete in third place. And it gained some coverage pretty quickly from The Hill and from Newsweek. And even in the Washington Post, it found its way into an op-ed, which I imagine had to be 90% written before this poll came out, and it was added as an afterthought. But this we'll talk about the op-ed first. That was published at 6:09 p.m. It's 7:41 right now, so your host here is on top of the news for what that's worth. It says Pete Buttigieg has broken through. The title, is Pete Buttigieg has broken through the noise on community and religion. So the gist of it is Mayor Buttigieg is talking about some issues that the other candidates haven't talked about yet. And these are values that are traditionally imagined to be traditional and sometimes appeal to a more conservative crowd. And so the op-ed reads, Mayor Pete, as he's known, frequently talks about matters that are not strictly political, do not necessarily lend themselves to solutions by government, and have more to do with how we live our lives than where we stand on an ideological spectrum. It will be useful if his recent comments on two themes, religion and community, have a contagious effect. So this writer is somewhat advocating that Pete's kind of interest in speaking about values as opposed to going straight up policy, which Senator Warren has advertised herself as doing. He's saying that this is a good move for Pete, and it's solidifying him as a new type of candidate in this race. And looking at how broad of a field this is, where anything you can do to separate yourselves from the pack is going to be important. It's going to be necessary, whether that's just through extensive fundraising and being able to out-advertise everybody else, or whether it's being by far the youngest person, or not by far, but being the youngest person in the pack or being the only mayor in the pack. It looks like things are working out well for Pete Buttigieg. I gotta imagine that it helps that he has a funny name and a great Twitter presence. But so that's what we're looking at today is overall a great day in the news for Mayor Buttigieg. He also recently has actually got some good coverage in Ebony, the African American culture magazine, because it's interesting, but the sort of ecosystem of the 2020 electoral the electoral ecosystem is tough for white males just because we've had so many white male presidents already, and a lot of progressives are looking for something new. So Ebony's here explaining that Pete Buttigieg has found a base in black voters, potentially. And so there's something about this candidate that's appealing to a diverse crowd and appealing to those who feel that they need something new in the Democratic Party. And that's valuable because it's separating him. Anything that Buttigieg can do to separate himself from this massive pack is going to be valuable to him. So that's, not nearly the complete news roundup of today. I've got to commend the Buttigieg campaign for having a fantastic, organized media outreach team. They are clearly smart on their messaging. The comment about the porn star president, that was far and wide, spread far and wide, and it made exactly the noise that he needed to make from that CNN town hall. Things like the word moment, advertising himself as the candidate who's experiencing his moment. That term has been spread throughout the media very, very effectively and has warranted some very clear messaging from different outlets. So the media for today is entirely positive, and that's a theme that I've been seeing around Buttigieg. Is he's not getting a lot of, certainly not takedown pieces. Everything's positive, and that's not something that can be said about all the other candidates. Senator Booker's still trying to separate himself from the vote he made on a pharma bill in the past, and he has been cast as this sort of big pharma stooge. Senator Warren is still trying to get over some unpleasant questions about her heritage, and people like Amy Klobuchar and other folks are caught up in their own sort of mires of unseemly news. And whether this coverage is proper or not, and in fact, sometimes I argue it's a bored media that's just grasping for some reason to make 2020's election relevant already. Whether or not you think it's fair, it exists, but it doesn't exist for Buttigieg, which is a great sign for somebody who needs to separate themselves from the pack. So that's the message for today, is Buttigieg is separating himself from the rest of the Democratic pack, and in this very confusing field right now where people are really begging for a candidate they can pin their hopes on and feel optimistic and become true believers in, Pete Buttigieg is becoming that person. So that's, I think, the news wrap up for today. This is the Pete Beat, the unofficial podcast for Pete for America. I'm Ben Chapman, and I hope I'll be talking to you again soon. Thanks for listening.